Welcome back, Winning Hand, the podcast all about Marvel Champions, one card at a time. I am Boom Guy, and I'm here today to kick off what we are calling Vision Month with the one and only Lethus.
Hey!
Okay, so let's not waste any time. Let's remind people. I announced this before, but let's remind everybody. We are doing a deep dive this month. What does that mean? Well, that means normally we are a bi-weekly podcast. We come out every other Tuesday. This month, we are doing something different where we are coming out every single Tuesday. There will be an episode of Winning Hand. We did this way back in, I think, February of this year, and we talked about team-up cards. And this month, we are picking a single hero. It is Vision. Everyone, you're welcome. And we're going to be talking all about Vision. So today's episode is all about the hero card, and I think a little bit his mass form card, right? You can't really talk about one without the other, I don't think.
It goes along with them, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of a set. So the other 3 episodes of this month will be about different cards in his signature card kit. So we'll talk about a different one each time that we think represents Vision and kind of him as a playable character in the game. And so we're going to have 4 cards total. But today we're talking about the hero. Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Yeah, we were talking.
Guess what?
What?
We probably don't agree
A
whole lot.
That's not true, because we were talking right before this, and you said this is the number 1 character in the game, and we all agree on that, and it's your favorite. So I feel like I know where you're going to end up here.
You're right. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Don't forget, it's my podcast. I can edit you to say whatever I want. Okay.
Oh, dear.
Usually the first thing we do is kind of a what's on your mind segment where we talk about different stuff. This time we have so much to say with Vision, we're just going to kind of skip that and jump right into it because there's a lot to say here. Before we talk about the Vision in the game, we're going to talk a little bit about Vision the character. Now, I'm not a comic expert. You know more than I do, Lethus, but I just want to go a little bit into kind of the background of the character. So what do you know about Vision?
Oh, well, MCU, I know everything. For the comics, I know some of the differences between Vision in the comics and the MCU.
Okay.
In the MCU, he's powered by the Infinity Stone. That is not the case in the comic books. MCU, his personality is built off of Jarvis, Tony Stark's AI assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case in the comics. Again, he was built by Hank Pym, I believe.
It was.
The original Ant-Man. I think he still had a relationship with Scarlet Witch.
Yes, that's
Things
true.
definitely deviate. Like, he ends up with like an android family later. I don't quite understand what's going on there. Yeah, so I have some awareness of him, and I know he's very different. Not in terms of his power set, but just like the character's history.
Yeah. I know there's
relationships.
Someone listening for sure, because it's the internet. Someone is listening and knows way more about this than either of us. So anything that we say, somebody will send me an email and correct it. winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. Send me all the love you have for Vision and anything I got wrong. But yeah, he was originally called a synthezoid, which he was changed to be an android later. I don't really know. I guess that's just like 60s space talk or whatever.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah, but there's some ties with Ultron. There is like a long history of romance between Scarlet Witch and Vision, which is as weird in the comics as I think it is in the movies. Now, in the movies, it kind of came out of nowhere and was never really explained, and I didn't understand why they ever had like this romantic thing.
There's like 2 scenes that sort of hint things maybe going that way, and then all of a sudden it's going. It's been happening. Didn't you know?
Yeah.
Did you miss that?
And they're like so in love that she can't kill him at the end. I don't know. It's weird. It never made a ton of sense to me. But yeah, so the movies, I'm going to ask you about that. Do you think Marvel, that is, Disney, whatever, when they made the original Iron Man, they cast Paul Bettany as Jarvis because they knew they were going to make him Vision?
Oh.
Or do you think they just picked him for his voice?
I mean, I'm a huge MCU nerd. I've read about stuff a lot. I think I remember reading that wasn't the intent. But he is pretty great in that role. I like him a lot. He's a very good Vision.
He is a good Vision, and he was one of the brightest spots, in my opinion, of the WandaVision show, which I thought was a little weak, to be honest.
That's a complicated thing to talk about, but like,
yeah,
overall, I loved WandaVision.
I really liked the first half or 2/3 of it. The end kind of devolved a little bit and lost me. I really loved the premise and how they set it up and how it was structured episode by episode. That was cool. I did think Vision was really good in it. Some of the other stuff got a little weird, and then we're not going to talk about Quicksilver, which was like...
That was
super weird.
Oh, that was rude. That was very rude.
And like totally unnecessary. I don't know. Like that was weird. Ralph Boner.
I thought it was fun, but
it was like a little, hey, like wink, wink. Guess what? Anyway, I really liked him in the MCU. That was before this game. Then I played the game. My history with Vision was that I thought he was cool in the game, and it became kind of like a meme joke thing. And then I really began to like him. And then I started like reading a little bit of comics, and I read a few graphic novels. They're a little strange. It's like kind of a weird character, West Coast Avengers and different stuff. And then I read the one called The Visions from Tom King, and that was incredible and cemented my fandom of Vision. If anyone has not read that run, I got it in graphic novel form on Amazon for like, I don't know, however many dollars, not a lot. It's worth checking out in the library or getting online or whatever. It is awesome. The art is incredible. The story is great. Highly recommended. I challenge anyone to actually read it and then tell me it wasn't good. winninghandpodcast@gmail.com.
Bring it.
Yeah, you've not read it, have you?
I've not. No, sorry.
Okay. Well,
I do have some West Coast Avengers I haven't gotten around to reading. I really like Kate Bishop.
Okay.
But
West Coast Avengers is weird, man.
Yes. Yes.
U.S. Agent and Hawkeye and Vision. It's like a whole weird thing. I don't know.
It's a very motley team.
Yeah. It's like a very, I don't know, 80s comic book stuff. They're like, we have all these characters. What do we do with them? I don't know. Make one from the West Coast.
Shenanigans on the West Coast.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Anyway, so yeah, Vision has a whole history. So he was created, I think, as a copy of the original Human Torch, who was like a synthezoid also. And then that was changed.
So not Johnny Storm.
No, it was like a changed, that was before Johnny Storm. Anyway, there was a famous story called Vision Quest where Vision was taken apart and then rebuilt as like White Vision, who was like different. He also shows up in the show that we talked about. And then slowly in the 90s, I think he was like re-established as a character without the white character. And then he's kind of his own thing now. His power set, canonically, what are his powers?
I believe so. He can control the density of his body.
Yep.
Obviously, as we see in the game.
Well, spoiler alert. Okay, we haven't gotten there yet, but all right.
Sorry, as we see in the movies.
Yes, there you go.
He can fly.
He can fly.
He is super intelligent. Like, obviously, he's like essentially an AI, so he can think through things ridiculously quickly. He can fire energy beams.
Yeah, he's kind of like a shark with a laser beam on his head.
Yeah.
That's an Austin Powers joke, kids.
I think that's the extent of his powers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the comics, right, the solar gem is a solar gem. It like, I think they describe it as photosynthesis. He like absorbs sunlight like Superman style, and then he can use it as energy. In the movies, it's an Infinity Stone, right?
Yes.
That they don't know is an Infinity Stone, or they do?
The Mind Stone.
The Mind Stone. They know. Do they know what it is when they put it in his head? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's
the second Avengers movie, right? Age of Ultron?
Yes, at Age of Ultron is when that gets placed there. I don't know if the characters know it's the Mind Stone at that point, but they know it's an Infinity Stone, I believe.
Audience?
I haven't watched Age of Ultron in a while.
I have not either. It is the weakest of the Avengers movies? Yes. I'm putting my foot down. It's the weakest of the Avengers movies.
I think it's Infinity War, but...
Wow, that is a hot take, sir. Audience, tell me he's wrong.
Yeah,
okay.
It's going to be beat up on Letha's Day.
It is. It's kind of crazy stuff, and we haven't even gotten to that stuff.
It's fair. I get it.
Okay, so that's kind of the basic. Yeah, he has like super strength, probably. I think he has super strength.
He does have super strength.
Yeah, everyone has super strength at this point,
reflexes.
and he can fly, and he's smart, and he's got a laser beam. That's kind of it. Okay. I'll read the hero and alter ego card, and I'll let you introduce the second card here. So Vision is one of the few characters in the game that does not have a different name in his alter ego. Do you know how many there are, Lethus, that only have a single name?
Oh, not off the top of my head. I think there's like 6 Guardians. I think all the Guardians except for Star-Lord have the same name in either form. Oh, nope. Venom is a Guardian. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So Gamora, Nebula, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, Adam Warlock, and Drax are all the same in both.
Correct.
I think that's it, though.
But yeah, so he's called Vision, obviously, and he is I'll start with his alter ego. He's a 3 recovery. He's traded as an android, and it says, while you are in dense mass form, you get +2 recovery. While you are in intangible mass form, you get +1 hand size. Setup, put your mass form upgrade into play, intangible side, face up. He's got a hand size of 5 and 11 hit points. Flip side, as a hero, he is Vision. He's a 2 thwart, 0 attack, 0 defense stat hero. He's traded as an android and an Avenger, and he has an ability called Density Manipulation, and it says action, change mass form by flipping your mass form upgrade over, limit once per round. And his flavor text is, odd that some say I am less than human, when in truth I am far superior. So that's kind of like a dickish way to put it, but I get it. I get what you're trying to say. And it comes off a little wrong there, but anyway, so that is Vision, alter ego, and Vision hero. And so the reason we have to talk about his mass form, obviously, is because it is critical to both sides of his hero card. So why don't you read that card for us, Lethus?
Yeah. So again, the alter ego has him start the game with the intangible side in play. So I'll start there. Mm-hmm. So on both sides, it says mass form and permanent. On intangible, it says Vision cannot attack or defend. Reduce the amount of damage Vision takes from each attack by 2. Mm-hmm. And then on the dense side, it says, while in hero form, Vision gets +2 attack and +2 defense, which brings him to a 2/2/2 stat line. And then it has a response, after you change to this mass form, draw 1 card.
So, first question, the permanent keyword, what is that? It means it cannot leave play under any circumstances, right?
Yes, I'm also having an epiphany in this very moment about what this means for Vision.
Go on.
So historically, if you look in the rules reference, the order of setup, you draw cards before you resolve character setup abilities. So this has mattered for a lot of heroes. People like Captain America might draw into the shield so they don't use the setup ability to go find it. For Vision, this has meant that since he starts in intangible form, but the setup ability doesn't put the mass form card into play until after you've drawn.
Correct.
It means that Vision has always started with a hand size of 5.
True.
But I think they errated permanent where those cards just start in play now, because after like Wolverine's Claws and that whole debacle, they had to do something. So let me look this up real quick.
That is okay.
So it hasn't actually changed. They did add some text to the permanent keyword in the RRG 1.5. The key change is that it says permanent cards are set aside at the start of step 1 of setup. So that prevents problems where like Wolverine's Claws can be in the deck or not where you expect them to be.
And then you can
now they have to be set out of play. So then the setup directions that say to go find the claws always work. Similarly for Vision, since you set the form aside at the start of the game, it's always out of play for you to find with the setup ability, but the setup ability still doesn't kick in until after you've drawn.
Okay. Well, everybody knows that when they play Vision, you just set the hero card and the mass form card on the table and then draw your cards and start playing the game. Like, we can talk about setup order or whatever, but the reality is when you're playing the game, the same with all the other ones that have a second form, like Wolverine's Claws, nobody sets it aside and then draws their hand and then puts it on the table. You just put them down and start playing.
Okay, but they've been inconsistent about this in ways that actually matter. Like Valkyrie's Deathglow and Rogue's Touched officially count as counting towards deck size. That's not true for like the mass form cards, though.
Okay. So we talked about those cards. I will just quickly say this is all custom art. So if you're looking at the cards, the hero and alter ego are both done by Patrick McAvoy. The mass form, the dense side, is done by Staz Johnson, and the intangible side is done by Juan Santa Cruz. That's a name I've seen a number of times. So let's just talk about the art first. We'll just start right there. What do you think about this art, and why is the alter ego art so amazing?
It is actually really good. I mean, I get where they're coming from with like the Visions book, which if you're not familiar with the premise of Visions, it's Vision and his android family just like kind of living a suburban life at home. So the idea of this super powered android just wearing regular house clothes is just inherently funny. Like,
it's cool. He's wearing like a sweater vest and like a little slacks and a button down shirt. He looks dapper.
Yeah, it
great. Looks good.
He's just walking around his house. Yeah, like the art for this a lot. So it's weird. You have to kind of talk about like 4 different pieces of art here.
I know.
There's his alter ego, his hero form, intangible, and dense. So his alter ego, I like, again, it's just kind of funny, and it helps this idea that he's not just flying around kicking ass all the time. His hero form is not super memorable, but it's a good, just sort of like heroic pose sort of thing. Intangible and dense, I think, are both really cool, where his intangible art is him standing kind of translucent and like bullets are flying through him. And then his dense form, somebody is hitting him with something, I can't even tell.
Sword or something.
And it's just sort of
shatters.
Like, yeah, it just breaks against his, super dense shoulder, which thematically is a little bit weird with the way they do some of the rules for this, but I like it reinforces the idea of the power set, at least.
I agree with most of what you said. I really do like this alter ego art. I think it's really great. The hero art, I think it is kind of not basic, but like it's just Vision. It's good, but it does not blow my mind. The intangible has always bothered me because Vision, the hero, like you said, he's like translucent in the city. The bullets are flying through him, but you can also literally see civilians behind him taking those bullets. So like,
you don't see people like getting hit and falling over.
There are people,
just you can see that there are people behind
people
him.
Standing there, and bullets are flying through. So imply what you will, but that's always bothered me. Like, why wouldn't you be in dense form there, right? I don't know. But the art is fine. The dense art, I like the art on intangible. Like, quibbles aside of what's happening, the dense art I think is the weakest of the 4. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either, to be honest. I think it's only fine.
Yeah, it's okay. There's no like environment art around him. It's just sort of like
just like,
I don't know,
light or something. Yeah. What I will also say is that the hero and alter ego are consistent. You can tell they're done by the same artist.
Yeah.
The other 2 they look different. So his costume looks slightly different. And then the style of it, like I think on the dense, you can see his chest piece has like 2 dots, but up on top he only has like 1 there. So he looks a little bit different, but those are minor things. I don't mind different interpretations either. But
one other note, I do really like the color scheming for Vision's cards, like the kind of yellow green
with the red stripe.
It's really easy to tell apart from everything else. It's very distinct for Vision. It fits like the coloring on his costume. It's a good. Yeah, I like it a lot. It's
One other minor quibble: the upgrade is not actually called mass form; it's called intangible or dense, right? And this seems like maybe I'm just being pedantic here, but it says like use the mass form upgrade, but it's not actually called that. That's like a trait that it has. It's not even a trait because it's not in that bold. It's like I don't even know what is that.
Yeah, in later iterations of ideas like this, I think they assign it to like traits.
So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I get it. It doesn't bother me, but I understand.
It doesn't bother me. It's just like they refer to the mass form upgrade, but
yeah, because it's just written as text. It's not like a trait. It's not like a label.
It's not the title on the side, so it's
Yeah, it's just something written on the card in the text block. It's a little weird.
How do you feel about the theme on this card? And again, when we say this card, we're really talking about two cards that have 4 different sides. So the discussion, I will say often this card, but what we're really talking about primarily is Vision, but he is inseparable from his mass form. So go ahead.
I give it a 9 out of 10. I feel like that's a little generous. I like the idea, and it was a new one that they did at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you said Vision was the first character to have like this other card that was just intrinsically part of the character.
Yes.
And that was cool new ground to break, and I like that they did that. It felt unique to Vision, but it also does feel very representative of him. So I like that they went that route. I feel like the effects are a little vanilla. If Vision were being designed and released today, I think he would look pretty different from the iteration we got, and it would probably be more interesting to me. But thematically, I like it quite a bit. That he has both intangible and dense form in both alter ego and hero, as opposed to like Ant-Man and Wasp came out before this, and they have, tiny and giant form, but those are both still hero form. Or Spectrum has gamma, photon. I can't think of the last one right now. But those are all only in hero form. Vision's the first one to have an alternate alter ego form, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think, he was the first one, and he felt very, like, it felt like we were breaking new ground mechanically when it came out, right? For those of you, I think this only applies to people who have been playing the game since before Vision. That was my experience, as I said before in the podcast. So I started pretty much at the beginning, and so I was playing them as they come out. I think if you start now, you might play Vision and be like, like, what's the big deal, right? We'll circle back to why that is at the end. There's a few things we want to talk about there. But I think when it came out, it was like, cool. This is really a cool way to do it because, like you said, Ant-Man and Wasp had more forms, and Spectrum came out in this same wave. And I think the way they did Spectrum and Vision is very different and very cool. And both of them work thematically. But yeah, I think this is really good. I love that he's got an intangible side that has one ability and then a dense side that's a different ability. And they both have kind of pros and cons. It's a really, really cool. Thematically, it works, and it represents to me like what I know of Vision. So we're going to talk about the power and the fun next, and that often usually gets kind of coagulated into a single discussion. So let's just start. The power of Vision. And I did a whole segment on a guest with Nelson all over. I'll link that down below if I remember. I will try to remember. I did a video where he does a whole series where he invites people to come on and talk about why their favorite hero is their favorite. And I talked about Vision. So some of the stuff I've already covered if you watch there, but I'll talk about it again. He's got the classic 222 stat line. Now that comes with a slight asterisk, which we talked about, right? He has 222, but he only has 222 in one of those forms. He has 200 in the other form. And what he gains is that immunity to some damage from attacks. I want to step back a second, and I think there's a very big elephant in the room here, and it has to do with the rules change. Because if you were playing Vision when he came out, if you're playing Vision today, none of this is relevant, but I still want to cover it because a lot of us started a while ago. The time between when Vision was announced and designed and when Vision was released, there was the rules change, the 1.4 update. And the 1.4 update had some pretty big changes that had to do with defending and defense. So, again, if you started after 1.4 or during 1.5, none of this may make sense to you. But before that, in order to be defending, essentially was just a basic defense. Is that right, Luthis? So I have that right? If you were not basic defending, you weren't defending.
If a character exhausts to defend, then the attack was considered to be defended. So heroes and allies could do this.
Right.
But card effects generally did not make you the defender when you played them.
Correct. So RRG 1.2 claimed that using cards like Wiggle Room or other defense cards that were traded as defense didn't count as defending. The RRG that came after that clarified that if you play a defense card, you are considered to be defending, and you are now the defender of that attack. So that changed protection as an aspect quite a bit. Now, unfortunately, what it did is it also changed Vision's precon quite a bit, because Vision came as a protection precon. Aside from his 15 cards that he ships with, he came with a number of protection cards, and I kind of want to run through those because these are applicable, I think, to this defending. He came with 3 allies. One was Jocasta, who I think to this day is still played quite a bit and holds up, is a really good ally.
Jocasta's really good.
Then there was Victor Mancha, who is another one of my favorite 2-cost allies. I think he's quite good. And then there's one that nobody's ever heard of called Protector, because everybody stashed it in their card bin and has not played it. Protector is bad.
That's accurate.
If you want to look at, we're not going to go through each of these cards, but if you want to know what they are, you can look them up online. He came with 3 copies of Flow Like Water. Now, Flow Like Water means after you play a defense card, you deal a damage to the attacking enemy. So, that before the rules change, Vision could play this out, and he could play a defense card. Like the ones...
While in intangible form.
Like the ones he comes with, which are Defiance and Sidestep, right? He could play Sidestep, prevent some extra damage, and deal damage back in intangible form. Now, after he arrived, the rules changed. The rules had changed, and then he actually can't do that in half of his forms. So his precon became a little bit broken. He also shipped with Indomitable, which says after your hero defends, you can discard it to ready your hero. Again, half of his forms can't use that. The aforementioned Sidestep and Defiance. And then he came with Get Behind Me. Get Behind Me is not a defense card, but you can play it when a treachery is revealed to get attacked instead of the one revealed effects. He came with Machine Man, and then reprints, and Reboot. He came with Reboot, which is an awesome Android-specific card that is an action. You can ready a friendly Android character and heal a damage. We went through a lot of cards there. I hear you saying into your AirPods, but Boom Guy, this is about one card at a time. Yes, I know. Bear with me. We're trying to talk holistically about Vision, and I think all this stuff is relevant. So I just said a lot there, Lethus.
You did.
Is it relevant? Am I crazy to talk about that rules change in 2024?
It's a good historical recap. Like, Vision came out at a very strange time in the game's life cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, more than
it is a much poo-pooed wave,
Vision.
Actually. Wave 4.
Yeah, it's the same wave that had Valkyrie and War Machine.
And Spectrum.
Like, there were so many rules questions coming out around this time, which I think most of the community was clamoring for a rules update, and we got it.
Yep.
So cool. But yeah, it's just good context for kind of looking at him and understanding him. And like Boom Guy is saying, the precon is really weird because it feels like, okay, it's introducing Flow Like Water, which is building into this kind of new archetype of defend and deal lots of damage,
which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. But it also felt at odds with what Vision kind of natively does. And it still kind of works for him because you can rely on the protection cards when you're not in intangible form. But the very valid criticism was like, well, why not just do anything else then?
Yes.
You can also do an intangible form, or helps you fight stuff when you're in dense form. Like, protecting yourself in dense is a little redundant kind of for a deck focus.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're playing that precon, you either are in intangible form and a whole bunch of the aspect cards don't do anything for you, or you are using those cards and then you're ignoring half of your identity and really what makes Vision unique, because the dense form is not what makes him unique.
Yeah, like having a 2/2/2 stat line is not very special.
No, I mean, if you only are in dense form, there's nothing special about him. He's just a 2/2/2 hero. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the flipping back and forth to gain the benefit of his really unique side, which is intangible. So, okay. So we talked about the defense rules. He has a lot going for him. And, I talk about Vision all the time, and I will defend his honor until the end. But he is very unique, and he's very versatile, and those are things that I value. So, like you said, he is the first hero, if we go sequentially, who came out with a second hero card. He's also the first one that had a card that could discard villain attachments. So the card called Phased Disruption Now we take it for granted because Sunfire can run it, and I think Shadowcat can do it, and there might be other cards that can do it now too. But he was the first one. I remember when that came out, everyone was very excited.
Yeah, for sure.
He has the Android trait, which is underdeveloped, but there are some very good Android cards, including Reboot and Jocasta and Victor Mancha, Machine Man, which is a bunch of them. Also, the 2-cost Gray Ally Vivian, which ironically he can't actually use, but she's quite good. He has access to a ton of keywords. Okay, it's just like keyword alphabet soup in here. He has access to Stalwart, which very, very few heroes have access to Stalwart, and he is the only one who effectively has access to it permanently. Nebula can get it. Rogue can get it temporarily, both of them. And Storm can give it out with her weather. But Vision can just put his cape out and flip to it whenever he wants to. That's big. That means Confuse and Stun really doesn't bother him, which makes him unique. Speaking of Confuse and Stun, he has access to both of those. He also has access to Piercing and Retaliate, and he can ignore Crisis. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and we're getting into, not in depth, but we're getting to like the rest of his kit. But bring it back to like the kind of base 2 cards with 4 sides kind of thing.
Yeah. One hero that has 2 cards with 4 sides.
Yeah. Vision is defensively astoundingly powerful. Like, the reducing all attack damage by 2 as just like a passive effect is insane value. That's like early on, that's just like a free defense, basically. And once you start getting minions and stuff out, you can just kind of ignore most of them and let them flail at you and just not do anything. Like, it's really strong. A lot of things just don't threaten him. Like villains that pop minions out on boosts, if the minion doesn't have at least 2 attack, it just doesn't hurt him.
Yeah, or if it doesn't some kind of effect or something, he doesn't care. He can often just ignore them and let them sit there.
Yeah, and that feels like pretty good when you get away with it.
It is good, and a lot of heroes have a 2 defense, right? There's some that have 3, but so that effectively replaces that, and he doesn't have to exhaust. Now, on the flip side, he can't boost that. Like, if you're in intangible form, you can't actually do more than that. So if someone's attacking you for 3, like a villain, for example, 3 plus a boost, you really can't add to that. I think thematically, I think it's a little weird that it doesn't just prevent, like, the first 2 damage from all sources. I think it's weird that it's only from attacks. Game-wise, I think maybe I understand why that is. I think if it was 2 from everywhere, it would be... I don't think it would be broken. I don't think that's the word to use. It would be better.
So thematically, it is weird just no matter how you slice it, because really Vision's powers of not being vulnerable to damage apply to both intangible and dense form.
That's true.
Like, there's scenes, like in the movie, I think like Hawkeye thwacks him with a baton and the baton just breaks.
Yeah. Because
what are you going to do to something as like dense as Vision?
Also, thematically, it's not the first 2 bullets. It's all the bullets. if we're being pedantic.
That still applies. It just depends on
how hard they are. The rocket launchers still hit for a little bit. So I think thematically I have some quibbles, but it was early on. I'm willing to forgive those.
There's some abstraction for sure.
Yeah. So what do you think about the power of Vision? Where do you fall on this?
I'm gonna present it as 2 ratings because it's kind of hard not to take into account the hero kit, but like
it is
just focusing on.
And I set you up by just talking about his entire hero kit, so I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just talking about Vision and his form card, I think he is very strong. Again, he has a 2/2 stat line that's good for sure, but it's not like world-shatteringly powerful or anything. It's just
there's better ones.
He can do whatever he needs to do, but being able to be in intangible form and then shift to dense form and hit something, and draw a card, by the way, is really good.
We didn't talk about the built-in card draw, which is really good.
Yeah, he gets to draw when he shifts into dense form, which is good. Taking into account the rest of his kit, he's really, really bloody strong. That versatility extends his entire kit, so he can pretty much do whatever needs to be done almost whenever it needs to be done. He's very good at everything.
If I step away from his entire kit, which we're kind of going to be talking about the whole month, so we're focusing on one card, but we're kind of bringing everything in. His whole kit, I talked about, he's got all the keywords. He's got card draw built in. He's got some really unique abilities. He's really strong and really fun. If we're talking about just this one hero with 2 cards that have 4 sides, that's our new tagline, by the way. If we're just talking about that, I think he is more middle of the pack. You know, he's got 2/2/2, which is good, but it also comes with an asterisk. Like, he only has 2/2/2 half the time. So if you want to take advantage of the card draw, it means like there's going to be times when you don't actually have a 2/2/2. And not only do you not have a 2/2/2, you actually can't attack or defend. So it's not like you can say like, well, I'm in intangible form and I can't basic attack or whatever, but I can play dive bomb. No, you can't attack at all, and that includes attack events. So that's a little limiting, but you have some card draw built in to help with that. And the reducing 2 damage is awesome. As we kind of have more and more scenarios and events that give you indirect damage here and there, I do think it would be cool if he just prevented the first 2 damage, but I get why he doesn't. I think he's kind of middle of the pack, like just his hero card and mass form. Like, he's got some good things, he's got some limitations, but I like that. But I don't think he's strong or not. He's kind of right in the middle to me. Now, fun. Now. Power, I will concede. Fun, I will say off the top, is 10 out of 10. I love Vision. Now, anyone who listens to the podcast knows I love Vision. Anyone who attended the Con of Heroes 2024 last month knows that I organized a 4-player Oops All Vision game, and we played, all 4 of us played Vision. One of the people played a Vision sidekick deck with the Vision ally. So it was Vision everywhere. We played against Ultron. It was insane. We had so much fun. We got all different aspects. So anyway, I've talked about that already, but I play a ton of Vision. I like him a lot. I think he's super fun. I think the thing we talked about before, he's unique. I really love building into that intangible side because that is what makes Vision unique. Mm-hmm. If you take away the intangible side, he's just a 2/2/2 hero, and then he's really like just nothing at all. So I always try to build into that because that's what's fun, right? That's the decision making of the game. You have to decide, when do I want to be in alter ego. You could play him like, I just flip every other turn, right? Every turn I'll flip back and forth, and that means that every other turn I'll draw a card, which is good. Or you might say you build the famous Bring It deck, right? We talked about that with Brant 20 episodes ago. I don't even remember. Where you just sit in intangible form, you ignore all the minions, you actively pull them out with Looking for Trouble and Angela and stuff like that, and let them sit there and farm cards with Bring It, which is a super fun deck. I think Vision is really fun. And his versatility, again, I don't want to talk about too much about the rest of his kit, but the ability to do whatever you want is what I love about Vision. So in a given moment, and there's some cards that literally talk about this, and spoiler alert, we're going to talk about Solar Beam because it really encapsulates this whole thing. But Solar Beam is like the prototypical Vision card. It's like, if you're in this form, you can do this. If you're in this form, you can do this. And in that moment, you can choose. And that's just so awesome. I love that he can do whatever he needs.
I love him a lot less.
Wow, jeez.
Sorry.
No, but tell me why.
I think Vision's very powerful, but I don't think he's very fun.
It's thematic, right? He's kind of adult, but he's powerful.
So my problem with him is that I feel like he doesn't have enough incentive to actually flip out of intangible. Like, you can just turtle an intangible for a really long time, much of the time. Like, if you're taking care of schemes, just stay intangible. Just take less damage. It's fine. You basically don't need to flip to dense form unless there's a minion to take out.
Or you want to win the game and defeat the villain at some point.
I mean, eventually, but like, he has this innate ability to stall the game and just build a crazy board state. And it's kind of fun to make that crazy board state. Like, I think my friend built Aggression with Bring It and stuff. And then Hone Technique and Dive Bomb and just wipe the whole board. And you can let, minions wave at you for 3 turns, because what do you care? They're not hurting you.
Actually, in that build, I'll interject. Bombs Away is my new favorite card because it is an action and not an attack. So Bombs Away, I can just exhaust an aerial character and deal 3 damage to everyone engaged with that character. So I just stay in intangible form, play Bombs Away, and you just exhaust a vision and just deal 3 damage to everyone he's engaged with, and that kills a lot of minions. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, it's really strong.
Yep.
But I don't think he really has interesting decisions to make around his forms. You just change the form you need when you need it.
I a little bit disagree. Isn't changing to what you need in the moment what makes an interesting decision? Isn't that literally the definition of decision making?
The interesting thing is the trade-offs. So like Wasp, for example, if like say you change a giant form because their stats are better there, right? Cool. But then you end up taking a bunch of damage. So the next turn you have a minion you want to deal with and Piercing Strike. Well, you could flip to Tiny and overkill the minion and do a bunch of damage to the villain, or you could play it to just kill the minion, not get any damage on the villain, and flip down because you don't want to get hit again. Like, there's a trade-off there. Vision doesn't ever have to give anything up. He can change between his dense and intangible forms and still flip to Alter Ego if he wants to. So you just do what's best. Like,
well, he's not
you don't
Ant-Man,
generally lose anything.
who just wants to flip for the sake of it, right? Ant-Man just wants to flip to do stuff. And he's not Spectrum, who wants to also do the kind of the Ant-Man thing, but can't do it as well and gets stuck. Vision, for example, Alter Ego you mentioned, I think there is a decision there, right? When I flip to Alter Ego, what dense form I'm in determines if I'm going to have a bigger hand size or more recovery. So there's a decision, right? I need to flip down. Which one do I value more right now? Do I want the 5 hand size and 5 recovery, or the 6 hand size and the regular 3 recovery? And switching back and forth, like, there is a trade-off, right? If you go to dense form, you're going to gain a card, but you are going to lose that 2 damage reduction. So if you have some minions out there and you flip up because you want to draw a card, you want to do some attacking, now you've exposed yourself to all these minions. So, like, I think there's trade-offs and there's decisions to make there.
There's some. Like, he's not quite an autopilot hero. I don't think I don't think the decisions are interesting enough for me. Like, we'll talk about Shadowcat later.
We are going to talk about Shadowcat.
Like, Ant-Man is kind of the opposite, where you just flip every turn because you just want to flip every turn. Like, you also kind of don't think about it with Ant-Man. You just do it because
flip as many times as you
your
can.
power comes from. Yeah, like, you just want to flip all the time.
I think Ant-Man's boring.
Like, Ant-Man is kind of dull on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, he's really exciting at first, don't get me wrong, and I'm sorry to people who love Ant-Man.
When he first came out,
right now. And I mean, I've complained about Wasps being underpowered forever, but Wasp is interesting when it comes to her form flipping. Like, at first it seems really obvious what to do, and then you start to see some of the decisions you have to make and, like, some of the pain that comes with that. And one other thing I think is relevant to mention, so again, Wasp, her events do slightly different things in here, or in giant and tiny form. A lot of Vision's cards can only be played in one form or the other.
That's true.
Which is worth pointing out. Ant-Man is the same way, but Ant-Man has very few cards very few events anyway. Vision has more cards that care about or restrict him to being in one form or the other when you play them. But like I said, generally you can just do whichever one you want because you're not trading off the flip to Alter Ego or not. You just do what you need to when you want to.
So I will agree with you to some degree. I think the thing with Vision is oftentimes the cards that do things, how do I say this? They're like doing more of the form that you're in rather than compensating for the form that you're in. And that's just a design choice, I think. So if I'm in intangible form, that's like already where a lot of my thwarting is. I now have access to more of his thwart cards.
Right.
And Vivian thwarts for more.
Yes.
When maybe I would rather that Vivian's bonuses were switched and she was attacking for more when I'm an intangible because I can't attack.
But then you just never flip. Like, that's what forces you to flip, is that you have to deal with minions at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, allies can do it, obviously, but, like, Vivian is really, really strong.
Vivian is really good. He has a decent defense card, but it's not that good. He only has one copy of it. It's very limited because it forces you to defend. So you have to be in dense form and you have to defend and then play this card, which then prevents all damage and stuns the attacking enemy. But I really just wish I could play it and not have to defend, you know? Like, rather than being a when you defend trigger, could just be like Rogue's card, whatever that one's called. Bulletproof Bell, right? That just you just prevent the damage instead of having to defend and then prevent the damage. Anyway, semantic.
There's trade-offs.
And it only has one copy of it, which means you have to both draw into it at the right time and be in the right form at the right time. So I generally ignore that unless I'm using Jocasta to make sure I have it when I want it. Other than that, it's kind of weak.
It is a weird restriction for Vision specifically.
Yes.
Like, everybody needs to draw the defense events at the right time, generally.
Sure.
But Vision also needs to be in the correct form when he draws
Which you have to have decided on before you drew your hand.
Right. So either you're holding it from the turn prior, which feels bad, or you're
just hoping you get it.
Right. When you could just be in intangible form.
And then it's just dead. Exactly. Like, the trade-off is you'd rather just be in intangible form because that guarantees 2 less. Unless you're playing someone really nasty like Ronin, and you know you're going to get attacked for a ton.
And sometimes you can't be, right? You do need to flip at some point to dense. Like, sometimes in inopportune times, because there's just stuff you need to deal with. Just Vision's ability to mitigate things natively by staying in intangible is really, really high.
It's so good.
It's really strong.
I think we kind of talked about the fun and the power. I really enjoy the puzzle of like which cards I can play when and when to be in one mass form. To me, it feels like a puzzle that puzzle is the wrong word, because Psylocke feels like a puzzle.
She does.
Vision just feels like I'm making some decisions. And I like that, deciding like, oh, when I'm going to be in what and how I'm going to build the deck around this very unique ability that nobody else has. And it's not so complicated that I'm like, play Psylocke and then I like need to be done for the night.
We need to do an episode on Psylocke at some point.
Or even Shadowcat, which we are going to touch on very quickly. So, okay, Shadowcat. We teased her a couple times. Do you want to talk about Shadowcat before we do final ratings or after?
Let's do it after. That way, if people don't want to hear about Shadowcat, they can just stop listening to us.
Nobody wants to do that. Okay. We'll do final ratings then. I'm going to let you go first because I'll do mine. Everyone already knows what I'm going to say anyway, but go ahead.
Remember,
this is not the entirety of his kit. As much as you can, try to keep it to his hero card.
I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10.
Oof,
like,
that's harsh.
Again, I think he's really strong, but that's not really what I'm rating on here. It's more how much I enjoy the character, and I just don't really enjoy Vision. I think he's dull to play. I think his intangible form is too strong. And like boils down to I'm just going to basic thwart every turn and not die. And that's pretty dull. But I do appreciate, again, the theme of having the form card that came along with the identity card. And there's some cool aspects of that I think they expanded on with later characters, but it kind of started here, and I appreciate that about him.
Okay, so I just told you we're trying to keep it to this one hero, 2 cards, 4 sides, rather than his entire kit. We've done a couple hero reviews on this podcast so far. I know we reviewed Miss Marvel, we did Iron Man, we did Drax, I think. This is the first one that I can think of as I was writing my final score that it feels very, very difficult to separate the rest of his kit. It is so like ingrained in the mass form, I feel like. So it's very difficult. But I will also try. I think Vision is awesome. I love playing Vision. I play him a lot. I think he's really fun. Some of that is a me thing. I just enjoy underdogs. I enjoy quirky things. And so I generally stay away from the really powerful heroes. I've said that before. I don't play the really strong decks. I value kind of quirky stuff that's a little different. And I think the intangible thing is something that makes Vision really unique that nobody else can do. and building around that is fun. But if I'm just reviewing the hero, I think I'm going to give him... it pains me.
It's so difficult.
I'm going to give him...
You did this to yourself.
8.5 out of 10. Because I can't give him a 10. Because I like the art overall. I like the theme. I think you do need to flip back and forth. I agree with you that I think one of his forms is clearly better than the other. And the only reason you ever go to the other one is because they said, like, well, would you go there if you can get a free card? And you're like, I don't know, maybe. They're like, well, would you go there if you could attack? And you were like, I don't know, but this Nintendo's pretty good. They were like, okay, but what if you can't at all attack if you stay there? Then would you flip? And then you were like, yeah, I suppose I'll flip then. So it kind of feels like you said, there isn't a ton of incentive to flip. The incentive to flip is with all the other cards. So, you know, it's the Vivian and it's the Solar Beam and it's all the other cards that we're not talking about today.
We'll get to him.
Vision's kit as a whole is 10 out of 10. He's still my favorite hero. I play him all the time. But if we're talking about just the hero card, I'm going to give 8.5 out of 10, which feels like I'm shortchanging him, but that's so good. It's such a good rating. Okay, so let's get to the question I really want to ask you before we go, which is Shadowcat. We've teased her a few times. Is Shadowcat really just Vision 2.0? And is there any reason somebody in 2024 would go back and play Vision when they could just play Shadowcat?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Has she replaced Vision?
I feel like she is a much more interesting and engaging version of what Vision sort of presents. And I think that's largely because Shadowcat doesn't have perfect control of her form shifting the way Vision does. Shadowcat is fun because you figure out the puzzle of like how to manage your form shifts as you're doing things to try and make it work out, whereas Vision just does it like basically every time. Like there's no, oh, but if I do that then I can't do this, except for like flipping to alter ego in a certain form. But Shadowcat, like you need to figure it out, and that's the fun puzzle. And I like and I like that it I was gonna say I like that it interacts, like the things she does interact with her form, and Vision kind of does, but for Vision it's more like the form is a requirement to fulfill for the thing you want to do, whereas for Shadowcat the thing you want to do and the form are like frequently tied together in some way that you again don't have perfect control over. Doing a thing causes another thing to happen, and that's a lot more fun and interesting to me. That said, Shadowcat's too damn strong, and like that frustrates me about her. But from a fun perspective, like Shadowcat is a blast to play. I think for me anyway, she's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. Shadowcat is really good and really strong. And the fact that you just like don't take damage is an insane ability that I don't like to use the B word very often, but that is borderline broken because you can just not take damage. And it's a little bit of a puzzle to get there, and you have to sequence things the right way, but like it's not that hard. You can go through an entire campaign and like really just never take damage.
Especially in protection. Like Shadowcat protection is just insane.
It's crazy. I've seen it. It's really, really good. So first of all, you talk about her cards and like you do a thing and something else happens. It often to me when I'm playing Shadowcat feels like you do something and then it's like a kicker. It's like you do this. Oh, and if you're in this form, then like also this thing happens. And you try to hit that a lot. I feel like it is a lot more thematic. Shadowcat feels like bouncy and you're going back and forth and you're like in this form, then you're bouncing back and you're here and there. And Vision feels thematic in that he's just like, I just stand here and you can't hit me, and like when you're done we'll figure it out, you know. Like from the comics and the movies, this is that like slow kind of like, okay, like you go ahead and shoot and then like when you're done we'll talk. And I'll wait it out, where Shadowcat feels like, well, I'm going to like jump through this wall and then this is happening and then like, oh, and I'm going to punch you and then I run. So it just feels like it feels different, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Vision is a comic movie, you know, talking about him that way. Vision is way stronger than a lot of other heroes.
Yeah.
Definitely stronger than Kitty Pryde. Like, you can shoot Vision and he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, even if it were to pierce his skin, he might just not care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so strong. So, like, I like that aspect to him where you could just sort of, like, let the bad guys, like, have their volley, and then he just turns solid and thrashes them all.
Yeah,
like,
with the solar
that
beam.
is cool in its own way.
So it feels thematic.
Yeah, that's fair.
The question I asked you is Shadowcat Vision 2.0? And does she replace Vision?
I don't think she replaces him. I think Shadowcat, I tend towards the more like active characters versus build a gigantic board. And it's not that Shadowcat doesn't have anything to play for upgrade. She does, but she feels very action focused. Vision feels like if you are that person who likes building out boards, like if you're a white-blue magic control player, you love Vision.
I don't know what that means, but
it basically means you sit back and are a defensive wall, the enemy can't touch you, and you build up your fortress. You build up all your little things, and then you obliterate them.
I guess that's me.
Like, that's, yeah, like, it that absolutely appeals to, you know, I get that appeals to a segment of the player base, and I'm not going to fault them that. But it's not what I tend toward. Like, Shadowcat just happens to fall more in line with the things that I like to do.
Shadowcat, to me, doesn't feel like Vision 2.0. It feels to me like Vision and Spider-Gwen had a baby, and that baby is Shadowcat. That's how I think about her. It's a combination of this like intangible but also very active and reactive and responsive hero.
Yeah. You know, when Mutant Genesis came out and we first got to play Shadowcat, like, I have a friend I play through all the campaigns with. We got through a couple of games with Shadowcat, and I was like, Shadowcat is what I wish Wasp felt like. I love that feeling of, like, you're in there and you're, like, scrapping and fighting, and then you're just out and you're gone, and, like, the enemy throws some giant counterattack and you just evade the whole thing and then go back to doing your thing. Like, oh, it's so much fun. I love that feeling of agility. And, like, yeah, the spider, like, web warrior characters tend to play that way.
Yeah.
Which is part of why I like them so much.
Shadowcat just, it feels often anticlimactic. You know, when it first came out, I played with Lazy Titan. We played through a campaign. He played Shadowcat. And it often felt just like it didn't matter who we were fighting, and what the boost card was didn't matter, because he had already determined he was going to take 0 damage. So it felt kind of like, oh, you have 2 boost cards. Okay, I'll just like discard them. It doesn't matter. Oh, okay, because it is impossible to take damage, and so it felt a little, I don't know. It feels good for a little bit.
She can trivialize things
but
sometimes.
Then it feels like what are we even doing? Like, why does the villain have a phase? Because you know. And then on my turn, he would figure out some way to do something, so he would just take the attack and nothing again.
Yeah.
So
I think she's too strong. Her ability to just negate villain attacks is, especially in protection, like,
it's too much.
Just way too consistent.
Too much. Until
that sort of like power fatigue sets in. Like when I first played her, like, man, I loved Shadowcat.
Yeah.
But I don't think she replaces Vision. I think they're actually for very different sort of play styles. I think Vision is more of a build up an unstoppable kind of board state. And I think Shadowcat is more of that, like, kind of nimble, agile feeling. They're both actually really damn strong. Like, Shadowcat's not good against getting hit by waves of minions. That actually hurts her really bad.
Because she's bigger against big attacks.
She only has 9 HP.
And she thrives against, like, the single huge attack rather than like the ping damage, which Vision is kind of the opposite. Like,
exactly.
Vision does struggle against, like, the heavy hitters, like Juggernaut, who can, like, hit him multiple times. Like, he can lose because he can't defend himself.
Right.
I've had that happen too, where you get stuck and it's like, Juggernaut, okay, now he also hits you for 8, and you're like, well, I actually can't defend, and I don't know. I guess I'll just take it.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we go, we did our final scores. We talked about Shadowcat. Best aspect for Vision. Just hit me quick. 1 to 4 or 5, I guess now. Like, what are your favorite or best? What do you like the most to play Vision in? You know, I see you don't like Vision, so go ahead.
I'm not counting Pool. I can't do it. I can't. Off the cuff, leadership, then aggression, then justice, then protection.
Oh.
I didn't think about it too hard. I just went with it.
Okay, just gut. Yeah, I think I'm protection 1, aggression 2, leadership 3, justice 4. I think justice. I'm not a huge justice player anyway, but there's too much thwarting. He has enough thwarting in his kit, and I think it's overkill. But the confused
That's
stuff
fair.
is different now. That's opens a new archetype. So there you have it. Lethus and I finally agreed. Vision is the best. Yeah.
I don't get paid enough for this.
The edited audio I just listened to said that you loved him the most. So that's yeah. Thanks for everybody listening. We are going to do Vision all month. If you are not a huge Vision fan, that's okay. Stick with us. Ride it out anyway, because neither is Lethus, and he's going to do it. So if he can do it, you can do it. And for all the Vision fans out there, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. Let's talk about Vision. I'm always here for it. But we will pick 3 other cards to talk about. I already said one of them is going to be Solar Beam. That'll be next episode, and then we'll have 2 more after that. So if you want to hear about Vision and a little more about his kit, join in, and we'll talk about other stuff too. So for everybody here at Winning Hand, which is me and Lethus today, thank you for listening. If you liked it, if you listened this far, please take 30 seconds, leave a review. It does help a lot. If you didn't like it, reconsider your life choices, do something else with your time, unsubscribe, and I hope you have a great day. Lethus, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.
Goodbye, everybody.
I'll stop eventually.
Bye, everyone.
Vision is astoundingly powerful.